So when somebody recommended that we show misrepresentation, my first assumption, it's not clear enough, it's not black enough, I don't know, it's just a sitting on audience, or myself personally will galvanize around the movie. And watching the movie, I was touched. I mean, there are parts where I cried, like my own frustration in finding myself as a woman in the United States, as a black person in the United States, as a queer person in the United States, and trying to balance that juxtaposition. And I felt that the documentary captured that and also gave me data to understand what my frustration was, right? So what we're going to do now is set up for the panel discussion, but what I want to ask is if you could break up into smaller groups, kind of begin to digest the movie while we get the panelists up here, so we can all come back together for the group discussion.
White girls will say, you know, they're
And I think that's one of the things that was lacking. And as a woman of color, and as a woman, and I carry so many political labels, for me, I have to hear my voice. And it took me so long. I used to not even be able to sit in front of a crowd and speak to people. I get nervous. But my voice is important. And all of our voices are important. And I want to hear those voices. I want to have these type of conversations. I want you guys to lead, if not with one thing. When we look at each other in the communities, those preconceived notions that we have about one another. Ask yourself why. You know, I'm always the one, you're different. I'm no different than anybody else. And I just want to be heard. So we have Aubrey Francis. She's 18 years old with a strong connection to her Jamaican roots. She grew up in Southeast Seattle and now lives independently and works 2 jobs to support herself. She first got involved with Powerful Voices in middle school and has participated in 3 of their activist employment programs. She has represented Powerful Voices at numerous conferences, trainings, and events, and is an educator and advocate for young women, especially when it comes to media literacy. So Anam, she's Pakistani-born, Seattle-raised Desi woman, currently finishing up her BA. Her passions lie in the arena of social justice and human rights. She is a firm believer in the power of recognizing and working towards healing from our trauma as marginalized people. She enjoys dialoguing about and critiquing the oppressive forces that impact women of color as well as oppressed groups. Her goal in life is to help bring about awareness to the violence that is inherent in our capitalistic system and ultimately build alternatives with other oppressed peoples. Asia Reed is a youth activist and senior at Garfield High School. She has been involved in social justice work since the age of 14 and has worked with organizations such as Powerful Voices, Seattle Young People's Project, and Youth Ambassadors. She loves giving back to communities and encouraging others to stand up for what they believe in. She hopes to attend a university and pursue a career in social justice or psychology. Kayleen Oka has been teaching sociology courses at Seattle Central Community College for 5 years and has worked in higher education institutions in the U.S. and Canada for the past 15. She has a PhD in sociology and equity studies from the University of Toronto. Dr. Oka's specialty courses are race and ethnic relations and sociology of the media, where she examines issues of race, class, gender, and sexual orientation along with systems of oppression, white privilege, and avenues for social change. Bimda Uzuri Carpenter, also known as Lulu or Miss Lulu, has an eclectic and mixed identity, life story, and career as a Black Filipina, second generation, mixed, bi-queer, fierce femme, military brat, radical Christian rebel, poet, artist, builder, faith healer, activist, youth worker, and community organizer. She has pieced together her identities and histories to teach and organize against violence and oppression. Currently, she works full-time for Youth Care as an education and employment coordinator and part-time for John Stanford Public Service and Political Science Academy of Franklin High School as a community projects manager and service learning coordinator. Recently, she founded Green Bodies, a women of color arts collective with other fierce women of color, and Nomads, a youth solidarity organization. She is known within the community for donating her time to building with the following organizations for the past 6 years: HIDMO, an arts and culture community organization; Ladies First, Collective Organizing Committee, an anti-rape collective; Pinye Sa Seattle, Sa Seattle, Gabriella, Anti-Imperialist, Filipino International Organization, and the Service Board, a youth mentor program, and other youth organizations. And Molly Pink,
Hi.
she's the program manager at Powerful Voices, a Seattle-based nonprofit that provides programs and promotes social justice so that girls can realize their dreams, engage in their communities, and shape a better life.
How do you define media literacy and how do you teach that? What's your definition of that? I've seen that bandied about and I don't quite know how to define it.
Media literacy is like a long time ago, reading, writing, arithmetic, is very valued, but in this age of media and technology, it's just like the understanding is that we can read media and that instead of it coming at us, that we can actually like read it and see like this is what it's being said. For me, when I was watching the film, or when I think of media literacy, I first think of bell hooks, and when I first heard about bell hooks and like cultural criticism of like seeing the media and like being able to watch it, enjoy it, but then at the same time dissect it and take it apart, so that it doesn't like come inside of you and like become part of you. So the more that children and elders and people in the community learn to read the media in a way that so that they don't just have to take the media as truth, then they're able to like change media. Anybody else?
I would just say that the way that I've learned how to begin teaching about it is just like anything. How do you analyze something? How do you think critically about it? How are you processing what you're viewing and hearing and feeling instead of just absorbing it without thinking about it? Because media is so insidious. So it's sort of like, how do you slow it down almost to really think about, if you're listening to a song and you feel the beat, how are you also going to pay attention to what they're saying and what they're showing and what you feel and other people think, and how it's changing your actions. So it's sort of an ongoing life process, but the start of it is to really think critically about what you're observing and then what you're choosing to absorb or purchase, and then how it's affecting you in your interactions with
I would add to that too. I mean, I think what I have students do in my class is to look at a media text in a way that they've never looked at it before. So we look at sort of things that are, not just things that are there, things that are not there as well, right? What story is being represented here? And why? What's the reason behind that, right? So looking beyond sort of just the message, I mean, we look at the message as well. We look at absences, what's not there, or we look at trends, right? What's always there, right? So lots of times I'll have students look at, for example, Disney, which was up there, which is very, I mean, we know the stories of Disney. We know how, even in animated films, how race, class, and gender gets reproduced in characters that we don't think are raced or classed or gendered, but they are through their actions, through how they look, through their voices, those kinds of things. So I often have students say that after they feel like they've gained more media literacy, that they can't look at television or movies the same way. They can't just sit back and enjoy them anymore because they're seeing all these other things. But I was struck by how they didn't really talk about social media very much in this video, and that's particularly one of the mediums where women and girls are especially vulnerable. So I think it's an emerging sort of analysis that's going on, particularly
to the lyrics when I listen to the music now. Because when I was younger, I just, oh, the beat is nice, you know, I like this song. But I didn't know why. It was just because of the beat. But now I listen to it and I'm like, it's not really sending me a message. It's not really something that I would abide by. It's saying something negatively. And then women are already in the media being portrayed negatively. And so it's like I have to stop and reevaluate what I listen to or the shows
I
that
think,
I
the
watch.
first step is media literacy, and I don't know personally how to, affect change systemically, but I know that once you progress in your critical thought and you're able to see more dynamics, that you get closer to that realization. And I think if each person did something, a lot of people are like, we want it to change so fast, but just the people that write letters to the, state representatives, the people who write books, the people who try to make independent movies, the people who put together panels like this. That's affecting change, and over time, that change will impact it, systemically. So.
And how there were very few people of color, and there were very few overweight or obese women talking about how wrong this was. And how we kind of invalidate that statement from somebody we don't want to look like. And so when we see somebody talking about something, we don't want to be them because of who they are status-wise or how they look, then we kind of disregard their statement. And women do that as well as men. And one of the things that kept coming up and we talked a little bit about is the element of desire is not addressed ever. It's always a one or the other kind of side. And you don't address the fact that women want to be sexual beings. They want to be perceived as sexual beings more often than not. That's part of their desire. It's not all of who they are. And to not address the fact that there seems to be one side or the other. Respect me for my brain or respect me for my body. No, I want you to respect me for my brain and my body, damn it. That's where I want to, my message is always about empowerment. And I don't want to think that because I represent myself as sexy or because I want to be perceived as sexy, that's somehow me not being empowered or me not wanting to empower other women. And so there's an element of your appearance needs to be, we listen to them because they look like people that we should listen to. And not all of it is sexism. And so to divide women's desire to be presented as sexy, to be accepted as sexy, that's what the whole movie from Victorians to the 1920s, that's what that was about, was no, you don't get to cover up our bodies and tell us how we're going to represent ourselves. So there's an empowerment there that is not addressed. How do you represent both sides of those and not say it's these young women, some of them are going to be like, yes, I'm down with you respect me for my brain or you don't get none of this, right?
But how do we change our appearance when we go meet with youth, or when I was thinking about my outfit today, I was like, okay, well, misrepresentation, it's a little white middle class kind of thing, so maybe I can't put my boobs on a platform. It's not a queer event. I don't know who's gonna be here, but people receive you differently based on what you're wearing, and it's something that I have reclaimed when I'm talking about being feminine and being queer and being a woman. It's just I can be all those things and be feminine and still be powerful and have a message and demand respect, right? Not that I'll be given it knowing the patriarchal society, but do something different, right? And what is, for me, I'm when I started learning about media justice, and reading media and reading this video, I'm gonna be honest, I liked it, but I didn't completely embrace people talking about the same thing that she has talked about. And I'm the thing that kept bringing in her voice is where did she get her money? Who respects her voice so that she can get her curriculum and get paid when there's tons of artists in Seattle doing the same thing? I have been teaching you how to do media literacy. Where that word came from is from communities of color. And so just wanted to throw out the word media justice and saying it comes in
So
all
my
forms.
question is for those who watched Black Women, I guess on a high level, compare and contrast to this movie, right? And why do you feel like this movie, Julie kind of answered the second question. Why do you feel like this movie had a much bigger budget, it appears, than Black Women?
Well, Black Women was for real.
For real.
Not to put too fine a point on it. It was you looked at them on the screen and you were saying, oh, this is a Black lesbian woman. No bones about it. They're saying they're a Black lesbian woman. You can't, even the ones that were pretty, according to like society standards, were like not modeled pretty. They were real people, and it was not generalized in any way. Every single interview was about their personal experience, what they went through. It wasn't like, well, I feel like women, or I feel like queer people, or I feel like black people. It was very much like, well, this is what happened with me and my girlfriend, and this is what happened with me and my family, and it was very personal. Personal movies don't tend to make a lot of money. I mean, the more personal, the worse the budget, I feel. So this one is like, everything I feel like everybody's saying about what they didn't like about it is that generalization. Like, it's not women against men, and it's not like women have to do something about this. It's like, no, we all have to do something about this. And I felt like with black women, there was an element of like, this is what I've done about it, and this is what I'm going to continue to do about it. And with this one, it was like, now that you have the facts, what are we going to do? And I mean, I was just saying, I was like, this is a problem. Like, let's get action-based. Let's talk about what we can do on a day. Like, what can you do as an 18-year-old black girl going to school? Where do you make a stand? Do you make a stand every time? What happens to you if you make a stand? Like, I was whispering too, like the women's movement got labeled bitch, like across the board bitch. So now everybody's like, they don't say they're women's lib, they don't say they're feminists, they don't say any of these things, because if they do, they're being labeled bitch, and they're accepting that label, and then they're reworking that label. But that doesn't work, because it hasn't worked since the women's lib.
As a chemical dependency counselor, I work with women every day. And I know that one of the things that I'm really aware of is the desensitization of our feelings. We have a lot of thoughts, and there's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of negativity, but we don't really know what we're feeling. And I'm not suggesting we all fit that, but to some portion of it, I think we all have some piece of that, where we think and we're not feeling. Okay, so we want to do something, and my belief is that you just do it, one person at a time. You represent who you are, and you stand up for who you are, and you continue to educate yourself, and you keep passing that on, you pay it forward. And that's all I can do, is one person at a time.
I was just gonna say some of my thoughts when I'm hearing a lot of different people talk, and what I come back to is capitalism. And I feel like the film was really contradicted, like, because on one hand they're saying this is happening because certain people want to make money off the violent, racist, sexist, homophobic, misogynistic images of women. And so they made that clear. Yet everybody they interviewed is part of that, very directly part of that system. So it's like, how do, they just, it was so contradictory. Like, on one hand they're saying this, but they're not being true to, like, even the film itself is so rooted in capitalism. And I just felt like the film, it was hard for me to watch, because when she kept saying women, we as women, or when they were like, Nancy Pelosi or whatever saying we as women, I was like, no, it's not we as women. They're talking about, white, heterosexual women. Like, I feel like there has to be there has to be dialogue that goes into the complexities. Like, we shouldn't be scared of digging deep and, addressing the complexities, because that's where everything, I feel like, is hidden. Like, a lot of people's trauma, a lot of people's anger. And I just wanted to say that, I just saw a lot of women missing from that film. I didn't see trans women. I didn't see, disabled women. I didn't see, barely any women of color. I didn't see, like, a lot of immigrant women. They talk about, and we have to, as women, we have to talk about our specific struggles and, not be scared of the contradictions, like, look to them for power. So I just, I felt like the film was really lacking in that area, and I just felt like, when I think about these things, I always come back to capitalism and how it's all about money and people making money off of the murders and deaths of women of color, globally and, nationally.
I think it's important to note, like, that this conversation, like everything can be hold all the positive things about the film and all the other things, and that's what media literacy is. It goes back to the beginning of the conversation whereas like media literacy is like breaking this all apart and putting it back together. You can have all that good stuff, and people are seeing themselves reflected and not seeing themselves reflected at the same
I
time.
feel like what's missing is like the contradictory part of I was socialized in certain ways and then I have my own experiences, but I also am a consumer of a lot of this media. And I've had a lot of conversations, especially with women I work with, about like, are you down enough in this movement? And if you go home and watch a video or watch Bad Girls Club or whatever you're doing, buying Victoria's Secret, it's like this pressure on yourself also, and this guilt of like, how do I live in a capitalist society where I've been socialized this way, and like, I don't even know whether to believe is what I think is attractive what I think is attractive, or do I think that way because of how I'm socialized? And then all this guilt that we put on ourselves and each other about like, I'm not down enough with the movement or with other women if I'm sitting here watching this video. And then the last thing I wanted to add is that I also see media as a big coping mechanism for when people are suffering, oppressed, traumatized, feeling powerless. You want to zone out, you want to be distracted, you want to fill your mind, you want to clear your mind. And I find like myself coming home from work and not wanting to think about hardcore stuff all the time. And then I get absorbed in something that's not educating me, it's not feeding my soul. And then I question, why am I doing this? So it's like, in a way, it's a coping mechanism. It's a drug that's available to everybody for a fairly low cost, depending on your cable bill. But I also know people that prioritize cable over other like life necessities because that's a coping mechanism for them. And who am I to judge, what's getting you through the day or what's going on in your own life or your own processing. So I'm just thinking a lot about, I guess, too, the guilt we put on each other, and then how do we still make change when I want to acknowledge that I'm a consumer of a lot of the stuff that I don't always believe in, but I find myself like watching it.
I just wanted to say in respect to women supporting women, what I find as a lesbian is that when you try to support heterosexual women, that sometimes they misjudge your intentions, and that in itself is a challenge for me, and sometimes it makes me not want to support heterosexual functions because of that reason. Just because we come, it doesn't mean that we naturally want you just because you're a woman. So I just wondered if anyone else experienced that as a...
That's like a new way, like,
Yeah.
it's like with women's lib, with the white women, and they're like, this is what we need to focus on, and black women are like, but there's complications to this.
Right.
And they're like, no, but this is what we need to focus on. It's like the new wave of that.
Right.
Like, oh, why do you want to be on our side? Because you want us
I
all.
also want to
Right.
let you know that Sistah Sinema will be having